She leaned in slowly, almost floating, her lips just inches from mine. But I didn't meet her halfway. I turned my face. Her mouth hovered beside my cheek, motionless. I pulled back just enough for the distance to mean something. She froze, eyes wide, breath caught. "Don't," I said, gently but firmly. "But I—" And that's when I said it. The words she once delivered with a smile that cut deeper than any knife. "You used to be more attractive, and I loved you." Her face crumbled. She blinked fast, like the words physically stung. "You don't mean that," she said, voice tight, eyes glassy. I didn't reply, because I didn't need to explain. Her hands trembled as she reached for the door handle.
So there I was, Thursday night, leaning against the kitchen island like some kind of discount therapist waiting for his patient to arrive. And arrive she did. Laura walked in like she owned the place, which technically she did, half of it anyway. She tossed her designer purse onto the counter with that dramatic flair only someone about to drop a nuke on your life can pull off. "You're late," I said, keeping my voice flat, no emotion, just facts. She didn't even flinch, just grabbed some bougie sparkling water from the fridge, twisted the cap and hit me with, "I had drinks with the team. What, you tracking my clock-ins now?" Mate, something inside me just snapped. Not like movie rage snapped. More like that quiet moment when you realize the rope you've been holding on to just turned to dust in your hands. "You think I don't notice?" My voice stayed low, but it carried weight. The late nights, the silent phone, the excuses getting lazier by the day. She looked at me then, really looked, and smiled. Not a nervous smile, not an apologetic one. A cold, calculated, I don't give a damn smile. "My life, my rules," she said, each word dripping with the kind of indifference that makes you question if you ever really knew someone. "You want a report, Ethan? Maybe a GPS tracker?" I stepped closer. "Just the truth would be nice." She shrugged, literally shrugged. Truth's overrated. Then she turned away and started unbuttoning her coat like we'd just discussed the weather. No guilt, no shame, nothing. I stood there in that kitchen, the same one where we used to laugh over burnt pancakes and terrible coffee, and I felt every good memory curdle like milk left in the sun. Here's the thing about me. I'm a project engineer, 42 years old. I fix things for a living. Pipes, beams, structural failures. I measure, calculate, solve problems. But what do you do when the thing that's broken isn't made of concrete and steel? What do you do when it's trust? We lived in a nice 3-bedroom in Portland. Quiet street, oak trees, neighbors who actually wave. I drove silver Camry, watched Seahawks games with my best mate Nate every other Sunday. My life wasn't Instagram-worthy, but it was solid, predictable, safe. Until that night. I sat on the bar stool, hands clenched like I could physically hold the moment from falling apart. But I couldn't. The silence after she walked away, it wasn't peaceful. It was toxic. It filled the room like carbon monoxide, invisible but deadly. Can you imagine watching the person you built your entire world around just shrug off your pain like it's background noise? That phrase, "my life, my rules," it echoed in my head like a broken record. But you know what? It also became my compass. Because from that moment forward, I was done playing by her rules. And if you think that Thursday night was the worst of it, buckle up, because what happened next would make that conversation look like a warm-up round.
The next morning hit different. Sunlight poured through the blinds like nothing had changed, like the world didn't just shift off its axis the night before. But I felt it, deep in my bones, that irreversible slide into something hollow. Laura was in the kitchen, silk robe, humming, actually humming, like she was auditioning for some commercial about coffee and happiness. She poured herself a cup,
poured one for me, slid it across the counter without meeting my eyes. Her nails were freshly done. I noticed stupid things like that. Soft pink, matched her phone case. Everything about her was polished, curated, fake. We sat in silence, two people in the same room, breathing the same air, but miles apart in every way that mattered. I didn't drink the coffee. I grabbed my keys and left. "Have a good day," she called after me, voice bright and artificial. I didn't respond. I ended up at Nate's place. He's been my best friend since college. HVAC guy with a messy garage and a couch that's seen better days. But that couch, it saved me more times than I can count. I crashed there, staring at his ceiling, counting the bumps in the drywall like they might explain where everything went wrong. "She cheated?" Nate finally asked. I nodded. "Want me to key someone's car?" I let out this bitter laugh, first sound I'd made in hours. He tossed me a blanket and left it alone. That's why I trust him. Some betrayals don't need a play-by-play. They just need space to settle. By the time I went home that night, it was past 10. The house was dim. Laura was curled up on the couch, flipping through a magazine she clearly wasn't reading. "Hey," she said casually, like we were normal. I didn't answer, just walked straight to the guest room and closed the door. First time I'd ever done that. Slept separately. Wouldn't be the last. Lying there, staring at another ceiling, I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. The sheets smelled like detergent and distance. The next few days followed the same script. Laura pretending everything was fine, me emotionally detaching like I was unplugging from a faulty circuit. She'd text random stuff. "Don't forget the dry cleaning. We're out of oat milk." Like logistics could bridge the Grand Canyon forming between us. I never replied. Can you picture living like that? Sharing a roof, a mortgage, a past, but not a present. She kept up the performance, cooking dinner some nights, dressing up for nobody, leaving expensive perfume in rooms I stopped entering. There was this theatrical quality to it all, like she thought if she hit all the right notes I'd eventually applaud. But I wasn't angry anymore. I was empty. I'd gone through the fire. Now I was just smoke. I started sleeping at Nate's more, told him I was figuring things out, but deep down, I think I'd already left. Not physically, not yet, but in every way that mattered. Laura never asked where I went, never mentioned the nights I didn't come home. She just removed that layer of our relationship entirely. No curiosity, no confrontation, just quiet acceptance. And that was the worst part, because silence from someone who once claimed to love you doesn't sound like peace. It sounds like surrender. And I wasn't ready to surrender. I was still deciding whether to rebuild or burn the whole thing down. Then came Tuesday night, the night she told me everything. And mate, that changed absolutely everything. She waited until Tuesday, calculated like everything else she did. I'd just gotten home from work, dusty boots, dead tired, ready to disappear into a shower and maybe 12 hours of sleep. Instead, I walked in to find her sitting on the couch edge, ankles crossed like she was waiting for a business meeting. TV off, lights dimmed, that tight expression she wore when she was handling something. "Can we talk?" I didn't answer. Just dropped my keys in the bowl and stood near the hallway, already planning my escape route. "I'm seeing someone," she said, flat, clinical. "I've been sleeping with my boss, and I want a divorce." The air stopped moving. It took me a second to process the words, like they were in a language I hadn't learned yet. I just stood there, blinked, let the silence wrap around her statement like it needed room to exist. She didn't cry, didn't flinch, just sat there, calm, like she was reading the weather forecast. "Say something," she added. But I couldn't. My brain had blue-screened. All I could hear was that one sentence on loop: "I want a divorce." No emotion, no regret, just administrative. I finally sat down across from her, slowly, like gravity had tripled. "How long?" "Since late spring," she said. "Started with drinks after work. I didn't plan it, Ethan. It just made sense." Made sense. That's what she called it. I stared at the rug. Beige,
patternless, just like our marriage had become. And now you want to leave. She nodded. We're already separating at work. He's moving offices. But that doesn't change anything. I still want out. This has nothing to do with him. Not really. That hit harder than expected. If it wasn't about him, then what had I been? A placeholder? Background music? I looked up, studied her face. She was clutching her phone like a lifeline. Her eyes weren't even searching mine. She was done. You could have said this months ago. She shrugged. Maybe, but I didn't know what I wanted then. And now you do? Yes. This. That was it. No apology, no guilt. Just a woman who'd made her choice and had zero intention of looking back. I nodded slowly, not because I accepted it, but because I needed space to think, to breathe, to process that the person I'd built my entire life with could walk away this easily. I'll get a lawyer, I said, standing up. She blinked, surprised. Maybe she thought I'd beg. Maybe she thought I'd break. But I didn't, because something inside me had already started shifting the moment she said his name without flinching. I walked past her, into the hallway, into the bedroom, into the next phase of my life I hadn't seen coming. But somewhere, beneath the numbness, beneath the disbelief, a strange new clarity began to settle. She wanted out? Fine. But she wouldn't walk away untouched. Not this time. Because I may have lost the marriage, but I wasn't about to lose the war.
I didn't cry, didn't smash anything, didn't send dramatic texts at 2 a.m. Instead, the next morning, I drove 2 towns over and bought a $49 voice recorder from a hardware store, the kind contractors use for job notes. Fit perfectly in my jacket pocket. That evening, when Laura strolled in and set her purse down like it was just another Tuesday, I was ready. She didn't notice the extra button on my shirt wasn't a button at all. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, her scrolling through her phone, me waiting. I cleared my throat. So, just to be clear, how long has this been going on again? She didn't look up. I already told you, since May. Why? No reason. Just want to make sure I'm clear on everything. You mean you want proof? She muttered, eyes still glued to the screen. She had no idea how right she was. I was just trying to find myself, she continued. He listened. Honestly, Ethan, you've been somewhere else for months. I leaned back, let her talk. I wanted every single word on that recorder. When she finally looked up, there was something smug in her expression. You're not the first husband to get left, Ethan, she said, so stop acting like this is some Greek tragedy. She stood, tossed a blanket over the armrest, and walked off. I didn't stop recording until I heard the bedroom door click shut. That night, I didn't sleep, but not from heartache, from planning. 2 days later, I sat in a glass-walled office on the 39th floor downtown, sipping espresso from a cup that probably cost more than our entire silverware set. Across from me was Tessa Granger, family law specialist, former prosecutor, the sharpest divorce attorney in Portland according to Yelp and 3 lawyers I'd consulted. She listened quietly. No notes, just sharp, calculating eyes. When I finished, she asked one question. You have a recording? I pulled the device from my coat and slid it across the marble table. She pressed play, didn't blink as Laura's voice filled the room. Tessa let it run a full minute, then clicked it off. Well, she said, tapping a manicured nail against the recorder, she just handed you leverage. I sat up straighter. In Oregon, infidelity won't automatically swing a divorce, but it will influence financial settlements, especially if the affair happened during the marriage and affects joint property decisions. We'll position you as calm, clear, honest. She'll look erratic, emotional, entitled. That was the first moment I truly exhaled in days. This wasn't about revenge. Not yet. It was about control. I'd lost it that Thursday night in the kitchen, but here, in this office, under these lights,
with legal strategies swirling like battle plans. Here I had a say. When I left her office, it was dusk. The city glowed pale amber. I stood on the curb, breathing in diesel fumes and clarity. I wasn't the man who'd begged her to talk anymore. I wasn't the man who went numb in his own kitchen. I was something else now. Not angry, not grieving, prepared. That night, I didn't go to Nate's. I came home early, calm, sharp, focused. Laura was in the kitchen on a video call, talking softly to someone I didn't care to identify. She paused when she saw me. I walked past her, grabbed a water from the fridge, and looked her dead in the eyes. "Just so you know, you'll be hearing from my attorney soon." She blinked. A flicker of something crossed her face. Maybe surprise, maybe dread. I didn't stay to read it. I walked upstairs, and, for the first time since she dropped that bomb, I actually slept. Because the war had started, and I wasn't stepping onto that battlefield alone.
The petition was filed 3 weeks later. I'd already moved most of my stuff into a short-term lease downtown. Clean space. Empty. City view. Nothing on the walls. Just a mattress, coffee pot, and peace. Real, genuine peace. Laura, on the other hand, went full influencer mode. Suddenly, her Instagram was popping off. Brunch with colleagues, filtered selfies, wine tastings with captions like, "Healing isn't linear, but I'm trying," heart. I didn't respond, didn't even scroll. Nate told me what she was posting. I told him to stop. Then came the whisper campaign. Mutual friends started hearing things. Ethan was always controlling. She just wants to be happy. He emotionally abandoned her. It was strategic, not just sympathy-seeking, positioning. And it didn't stop there. In court, she went full victim mode. Her attorney, sleek woman, patent leather briefcase, affected sighs, painted me as distant, cold, emotionally unavailable. A man too focused on work, on order, on routine. A man who left his wife lonely and vulnerable. Laura dabbed her eyes with a tissue during opening remarks. I didn't flinch. My lawyer, Tessa, sat perfectly still. She'd prepared everything. Timelines, records, the audio file, and most importantly, my restraint. She told me early on, judges don't rule for the angriest person. They rule for the calmest. So I stayed calm. When Laura claimed I never listened, Tessa produced text messages, emails, shared journal entries, evidence of 2 years of couples counseling I'd suggested. Every thread unraveled gently. When her attorney hinted I might have been seeing someone else, Tessa smiled. No such allegations were filed. Let's stay on record. The judge glanced at Laura's attorney with a raised brow. She shifted in her seat. It was all a chessboard. Every move calculated, every reaction weighed. But what struck me most wasn't her performance. It was how practiced it was, like she'd been rehearsing for this stage all along. Outside the courthouse, I stood in the shade watching Laura glide past reporters she'd never asked to be there, but had no problem performing for. She passed me without a glance, but her lawyer paused just long enough to give me a look that tried to say, "You're losing." She was wrong, because this wasn't about winning anymore. It was about clarity. And in that courtroom, stripped of masks and mirrors, I saw something that changed everything. She still didn't feel sorry. Not for the affair, not for the divorce, not for me. She was fighting not to keep me, but to keep the story, to control the narrative. And that's when I knew she wasn't just losing a husband, she was losing control. And for the first time since this all began, that felt like justice. It started at the gym. I'd joined a new one after moving out. Clean, minimalist, tucked between an artisan bakery and a cycling shop downtown. A place where nobody knew my name. I liked it that way. 2 weeks in, mid-set on the bench press, I spotted her. Laura. Sleek black leggings, neon sports bra, leaning against the water fountain like she belonged there. She waved, that mocking smile again. I nodded once, kept going. She lingered, asked the front desk about a trial membership. Next day, same thing.
Day after, again. The staff thought she was charming. I knew better. She was invading the one space where I was rebuilding on my own terms. But I wouldn't give her what she wanted, a reaction. Instead, I pushed harder, hired a trainer, focused on form, dialed in my diet. Something about physical pain felt cleaner than everything else I was dealing with. Then came the online rumors. Through mutual friends, I heard she was telling people I was emotionally unstable, that I'd threatened her, that I lashed out when she asked for independence. All lies, all planted carefully. I kept screenshots, had friends forward me everything they saw. Easy work, Laura never understood privacy settings. Sent it all to Tessa. She filed it under pattern of hostile behavior. But me? I didn't respond publicly. I unfollowed her on every platform, removed her contact, deleted every shared photo album. The less digital oxygen I gave her, the harder she fought to stay in my atmosphere. But here's the thing about emotional parasites. They starve when you stop feeding them attention. I wasn't cold. I was focused. I started consulting part-time with a startup Nate's cousin ran, built their operations system from scratch. Spent weekends hiking, took myself out to dinner without checking my phone every 5 seconds, stopped sleeping with one eye open. My world didn't explode like she wanted. It evolved. And that change, that calm, that quiet growth, it rattled her more than any argument could have. One afternoon at the gym, she approached me near the stretching mats. "You look different," she said casually. "Lighter." I met her gaze, expression steady. "I am," and I meant it. She waited, expecting more, a question, an opening, anything. But I grabbed my towel, nodded once, and walked away. It wasn't cruel. It was honest. Because healing doesn't always look like joy. Sometimes it just looks like peace. And for the first time in a long time, I had it. It took 9 months total. 9 months of filings, motions, mediations, courtroom glances that felt like sniper shots. 9 months of Laura alternating between performative charm and icy detachment depending on who was watching. But the final hearing landed on a Thursday. Gray sky, light drizzle. Portland at its most poetic. I wore a charcoal suit, no tie, clean shave. Didn't dress to impress. Dressed like I already knew the outcome. Laura walked in 5 minutes late, hair pinned back in that polished way she used to reserve for anniversaries. Sat 2 chairs away, flipping through notes like this was a work meeting she'd mentally checked out of. Her lawyer glanced over, offered a tight nod to mine. The air felt like static before a storm. The judge asked if we had any final comments. Laura stood. "I just hope this can end amicably," she said sweetly, "that we both find happiness apart." Then, turning slightly toward me, she added with a soft smirk, "He used to be more attractive, and I did love him." Surgical, just sharp enough to draw blood, just vague enough to seem harmless. Everyone in the room looked at me. I didn't blink, didn't smirk, didn't flinch, just sat still, a stone among reeds. My lawyer didn't even look up. The judge cleared her throat, then read through the terms. Division of assets, allocation of the car, Laura's failed attempt at spousal support, custody of our jointly adopted dog. He's mine now. Then she said something I'll never forget. Given the evidence submitted regarding infidelity and the absence of financial contribution from Mrs. Breyer during the latter half of the marriage, the court grants Mr. Breyer the requested terms in full. No fireworks, just paper, a gavel, a signature. But inside, thunder. I stood, straightened my coat, walked past Laura without pause. She didn't smile this time. Outside the courthouse, the sky was still crying. Light rain dotted my shoulders, but I didn't pull up my hood. I just stood there, breathing it in. Victory doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just exhales. I texted Nate, "It's done." He wrote back, one word, "Finally." I didn't celebrate, didn't drink, didn't post. I went home, fed the dog, heated leftovers, sat by the window while rain pattered against the glass. And that silence, that was mine. Because in the end, I didn't scream, I didn't destroy. I endured. And for someone like Laura, that's the one thing she could never weaponize. I'd found something she couldn't touch. My own peace. 3 summers passed like waves. I didn't chase healing, I lived it. Built my company from a side hustle into a real operation. Spoke on a few panels, ran a half marathon. Took weekend road trips with friends who didn't ask about my past unless I brought it up. I didn't need to erase what happened. I just didn't let it define me anymore. So when Nate invited me to a beach party on the coast, his wife's cousin was getting married, casual crowd, good food, I said yes without hesitation. The air smelled like sea salt and firewood. Someone strummed guitar near the dunes. Kids kicked a volleyball around. I wore a navy linen shirt rolled halfway up my arms, and a quiet confidence I hadn't owned in years. That's when I saw her, Laura, standing near the drink station, plastic cup in hand, hair shorter than I remembered, darker too. Her face looked thinner, not in a flattering way, like someone who hadn't been sleeping right for months. She spotted me before I could look away. Her reaction was instant, visible jolt, like her body registered me before her brain did. I nodded once, polite, neutral, then turned back to the conversation I was having about paddleboarding. But she wasn't done. 10 minutes later, she approached. I saw her shadow stretch beside mine in the sand before I turned. "Ethan?" Like she needed confirmation. I offered a half smile. "Hey." She looked around, like the beach was too bright, too crowded. "Didn't expect to see you here." "Didn't expect you either." She shifted weight, glanced at my drink. "You look different." "I am." She gave this breathy laugh, almost embarrassed. "Yeah, I guess we both are." But we weren't. I had changed. She had crumbled. Pause. "So," she said carefully, "you live around here now?" "Not really, just visiting." "I moved out this way," she gestured vaguely inland. "Things changed after everything." I nodded. They usually do. Her eyes searched my face, looking for something familiar, some trace of the man she used to know. But I wasn't offering nostalgia. She tried again. "You still with that lawyer? What was her name? Tessa?" I smiled. "She was just my attorney, Laura." "Oh," quickly. "Right, I just assumed—" "You always did," I said gently. That landed harder than expected. She tucked hair behind her ear, looked down at the sand. "Listen, things didn't really work out the way I thought they would." I let the silence stretch. She kept going. "He left, my boss. Said he was transferring, but I found out he was already seeing someone else. Then the firm let me go after some internal complaints. It's been rough." I nodded. Not cruel, just quiet. "I guess I thought I'd have more figured out by now." "Life's like that sometimes," I said. She looked up, eyes just a little too glossy. "You seem happy." "I am." And it was true. No rage, no sting, no ache in the gut. Just clear, calm space where she used to live in my mind. She smiled tightly, dropped her gaze. "It's good seeing you again." "Yeah, take care of yourself." She walked away slowly, footsteps lighter than when she'd approached, but not freer, just thinner, like someone fading from a role they no longer knew how to play. I watched her silhouette disappear toward the parking lot, then turned back to the fire pit, rejoined the group. Someone handed me a toasted marshmallow, someone else passed me a guitar. Breeze rolled in off the ocean, warm, wide, forgiving. Laura was part of my past, but I was fully in my present. It didn't end at the beach. Week later, I got a message from a number I deleted years ago. "Hey, I know this is strange, but would you be open to grabbing coffee sometime? Just to talk, no pressure." I stared at it for 3 full minutes, sipping morning espresso in a downtown cafe, hum of early risers around me. Eventually, I wrote back, "Sure, 1 hour." We met at a quiet spot near the waterfront,
little place with mismatched chairs and hand-drawn chalk menus. I showed up early. She walked in 5 minutes late, just like always. Cream sweater, jeans, no makeup, no mask. "You look well," she said, sitting across from me. "You said that last time." She smiled thinly, dropped her eyes. I didn't think you'd say yes. I was curious." She stirred her coffee like it held answers. "I've been thinking a lot about things. About us." I didn't respond, just waited. "It's weird," she continued. "You spend years building something with someone, and then suddenly, snap, it's all gone." I nodded. "It's not gone, it just belongs to the past now." She exhaled. "Yeah, you always had a way of summarizing things like that." We talked for an hour, mostly surface level. Her freelancing gigs, my business expansions, how we both still hated 405 traffic. She didn't bring up the affair directly, but she did say, "I thought I was chasing freedom. What I didn't realize was freedom without meaning is just loneliness." I watched her carefully. She wasn't asking for forgiveness. She was asking for connection. Second meeting happened a week later, then a third. Each time she revealed a little more. Her boss broke it off within 3 months. Office gossip turned into HR complaints. Friends she'd leaned on pulled away, tired of the drama. She moved to the coast for quiet. Mostly found silence. "He's married now," she said during our third coffee. "The guy I left everything for." I didn't say a word. "It thought I had options," she admitted. "Turns out I just had an ego and poor timing." She laughed, but it cracked something in her voice. Still, I didn't offer comfort. Because here's a truth nobody likes to say out loud. Some doors close for good. After our fourth meeting, I realized something unexpected. I didn't hate her. I just didn't care anymore. Not bitterness, emotional exhaustion. Like all the energy I once poured into her had been rerouted into my own life. And now there was nothing left for her. Not even the heat of resentment. She was just a person I once shared a home with, a chapter I'd already written. Few nights later, she sent a long text, one of those emotionally tangled messages you write late, unsure if you'll regret it come morning. "Sometimes I wonder if we could have found our way back to each other if things had happened differently. I know I broke what we had. I don't expect anything. I just wanted to say, I see it now. I really do." I didn't reply. Not out of cruelty, out of clarity. Because when someone finally sees the damage they've done, it doesn't obligate you to reopen the wound. Closure isn't a door you hold open for someone else. It's the quiet final click as you leave the room for good. Thursday evening, when she asked to meet again, said she had something she'd been meaning to say. Text was vague, softened with emojis. Old tactic. I almost ignored it. But part of me needed to close the book myself, so I agreed, one last time. We met in a parking lot behind a quiet bar near the water. She slid into the passenger seat of my car like she used to years ago. Same perfume, same nervous glance. Sky outside was streaked orange and violet, but the air between us was tense. "You've been different lately," she said. I stayed quiet. She looked at her hands, folded in her lap. "Not cold, just far away." "That's because I am." She exhaled shakily. "I don't know what I expected. I guess I thought maybe if we kept meeting, something would wake up again. Maybe we'd remember who we were. We're not those people anymore." "I know," she whispered, "but sometimes I miss them." Silence settled. Then she reached out, tentative fingers on my forearm. "I just wish I hadn't been so careless with you," she said. "You were a good man, Ethan. You really were." Still, I didn't move. She leaned in slowly, almost floating, her lips just inches from mine. But I didn't meet her halfway. I turned my face. Her mouth hovered beside my cheek, motionless. I pulled back just enough for the distance to mean something. She froze, eyes wide, breath caught. "Don't," I said, gently but firmly. "But And that's when I said it. The words she once delivered with a smile that cut deeper than any knife. "You used to be more attractive, And I loved you." Her face crumbled. She blinked fast, like the words physically stung. "You don't mean that," she said, voice tight, eyes glassy. I didn't reply, because I didn't need to explain. Her hands trembled as she reached for the door handle. She stepped out without another word, but halfway across the parking lot she stopped, turned, and then it happened. She broke. Not with drama, not with rage, just a sob, sharp, involuntary, shoulders shaking as she covered her mouth, trying to keep it in. People turned. A few glanced over with confusion, sympathy, maybe pity. I stayed in the car, watched from behind the windshield. I didn't get out, didn't offer comfort, because this moment wasn't mine to fix. It was hers to live with, the same way I had lived with mine 3 years ago on those kitchen tiles when she tossed her purse and said, "My life, my rules." Now these were mine. She turned again, stumbled toward her car, fumbled the keys, climbed in, drove off. I sat still for a few more minutes, let the engine hum underneath me. And slowly, I realized I wasn't angry. I wasn't even satisfied. I was done. And that's what true closure sounds like. It doesn't scream. It just stops.